The world fell apart on a Tuesday night. We got back from Galena on Sunday, and I spent Monday in a fog of anxiety. Marcus had summoned me to a meeting for Tuesday morning to discuss the progress of your projects, the formal email read. But I knew that tone. Something was very wrong. Claire had tried to calm me down. Maybe he just wants to know if you're onto something big. You're one of his best reporters. But we both knew she was lying to make me feel better. I hadn't told Matteo, not yet. I spent all of Sunday trying to find the right words. But how do you confess to someone who just declared his love for you that the entire thing was a lie from the start? That every dinner, every conversation, every moment of his vulnerability was you gathering material to destroy him? So I put it off. One more day, just one more day to figure out what Marcus knew, to have a plan. I was a coward. Marcus's office smelled like stale coffee and disappointment. He sat behind his cluttered desk, his hands clasped, his face set in an expression I rarely saw on him. Genuine concern. "Sit down, Ava." I sat, my sweaty hands clenched in my lap. "How long have you been seeing Matteo Vieri?" He cut straight to the chase. My stomach plummeted. How long?" he repeated, his voice firmer. 6 weeks. There was no point in lying now. Marcus rubbed his face, looking tired. "Are you investigating the Vieri family?" I was. Was? I closed my eyes. It started that way. I got his number. An incident put us in contact. And I saw an opportunity. I thought I could get in, gather information, and get out. But then, you got involved, he finished, his voice void of judgment, only weariness. "Ava, do you understand the gravity of this? If he finds out you're a journalist, that you were using his trust." "I know," my voice broke. "But it's not like that anymore, Marcus. It changed. I changed. I'm not going to write anything that harms him. I can't." "So you've compromised your journalistic integrity for a man?" For the first time, there was an edge to his voice. "I fell in love." The words came out as both a confession and a defense. "And I found out that everything I thought I knew about him was wrong. He isn't just a criminal, Marcus. He's complex. He's trying to make changes. He's protecting people. He's a mob boss, Ava." Marcus raised his voice, a rare occurrence. "He might own a library and love his sister, but he still runs an organization that makes money through illegal means. People get hurt in his world. That doesn't change because he quotes Italian poetry." I know, tears burned my eyes. I know all of that, but I also know there are nuances, there's context. "And I know you need to walk away." Marcus leaned forward. "Immediately, before you get hurt. Or worse." "How did you find out?" He hesitated, then sighed. "Someone sent photos of the two of you together, at the restaurant, the gallery, the opera, sent anonymously to the newsroom's general inbox last night, with a message, 'Tribune's Ava Sinclair is sleeping with the enemy.' My blood ran cold. Who would send that? I don't know, but whoever it is knows your real identity and knows about your involvement with Vieri. And if they sent it to us, they could send it to him too." The phone in my pocket vibrated. A text from Matteo. "I need to see you, tonight. It's important." My heart hammered in my chest. He knew. Someone had told him. The black car arrived at 8 o'clock. It wasn't the usual discreet town car with the quiet driver. This one was a larger SUV, more formal, and there were 2 extra men in the front who didn't smile when I got in. The tension in the air was palpable, suffocating. No one spoke the entire ride. We didn't go to his favorite restaurant or to his home. We went to an industrial building on the south side, the kind of place that looked abandoned but which I knew from my months of research served as a neutral meeting ground for the organization's important sit-downs. My heart was beating so hard I was sure they could hear it. One of the men opened my door, motioning for me to follow him. We walked down a cold, dimly lit corridor, my heels echoing on the concrete, until we reached a heavy metal door. He opened it. And there was Matteo. But not the Matteo I knew, the one who smiled at my sarcastic remarks, who held my hand gently, who had confessed he was falling for me. This Matteo sat behind a large table, dressed in a flawless black suit, his face an icy mask. Surrounding the room were at least 10 other men, all watching me with expressions ranging from curiosity to hostility. And standing next to Matteo, with a smirk that made me instantly nauseous, was a man I recognized from my research, Dante Vieri. He was younger than Matteo, just as handsome. But where Matteo had control and depth, Dante had a sharp, cruel glint in his dark eyes. He looked at me like a predator sizing up its prey. Ava Sinclair, Dante said my name slowly, savoring each syllable. Or should I say, Ava Sinclair, investigative journalist for the Chicago Tribune, award winner for exposing corruption, specializing in, let me see, organized crime? The silence in the room was deafening. I looked at Matteo, searching for any sign of the man I knew, but his eyes were empty, cold as a January wind off the lake. Matteo, I began, my voice weak. 6 weeks. He cut me off, his voice low and controlled in a way that was more terrifying than shouting. For 6 weeks you have been in my home. You have met my sister. You have sat on my couch. You have listened to me talk about my father, about my fears, about the war I am fighting to hold this family together, and all of it was a lie. It wasn't. Do not lie to me again. The explosion came from nowhere, his voice bouncing off the concrete walls. Matteo shot to his feet, his hand slamming down on the table. You want to show me respect? Then give me the truth. Right now, all of it. Tears streamed down my face. It started as a story. I got your number, I sent that picture by mistake, and you showed up at my door. I saw an opportunity to get inside your world, to gather information, so I lied about who I was. And kept lying, Dante added, clearly enjoying every second of it. Dinners, dates, that romantic weekend in the mountains, all while you were gathering material to destroy us. But it changed. I turned desperately to Matteo. The first few days, yes, it was just the job. But then I got to know you, the real you. I saw who you are beyond what the files say. I saw how you love Isabella, how you carry the weight of your responsibility, how you're trying to change things. And I fell in love with you, the real man, not the story. How can I believe anything you say? The hurt in Matteo's voice cut deeper than any anger could have. Everything was built on a lie, every word, every touch, every moment I thought was real. The feelings were real. I took a step toward him, but 2 of the men immediately blocked my path. Matteo, please, I should have told you sooner, I know that. But I was afraid of losing you, of losing what we had. We had nothing, he said coldly. I had real feelings for a woman who doesn't exist. You had a source who was stupid enough to trust you. That's not true. My voice broke. I'm not going to publish anything. I destroyed all the notes. I won't hurt you. Oh, how noble, Dante laughed, a cruel sound. Did you hear that, Fratello? She's not going to destroy us. Should we be grateful? He turned to the men around the room. This is what happens when a leader lets emotion cloud his judgment. He puts the entire family at risk for a pretty face, who was playing him from the very beginning. A few men muttered in agreement. I saw Matteo close his eyes for a fraction of a second, the weight of it all pressing down on his shoulders. Dante is right, Matteo said finally, his voice dead. I let my feelings blind me. I put you before the family. That cannot happen again. Matteo, please. You will leave. He finally met my eyes, and what I saw there shattered me. Not anger, but resignation, as if something inside him had permanently broken. You will leave Chicago, you will forget everything you have seen and heard, because if a single word about this family appears in any publication, anywhere, I will know where it came from. And the consequences? You do not want to find out what they are. It was a veiled threat, but a very real one. I would never— Get out! The shout was final, absolute. The men escorted me, guiding me firmly toward the door. I struggled to look back, to see Matteo one last time, but he had turned his back to me, his hands braced on the table, his shoulders rigid. Matteo, I cried out, desperate. I love you, that part is real. Please, you have to believe. The door slammed shut, cutting off my words, and I was left in the cold hallway, with guards escorting me out, my heart shattered into a million irreparable pieces. Claire found me on the floor of our apartment 2 hours later. I had stumbled in, locked the door, and simply collapsed. I couldn't stop crying, couldn't breathe, couldn't process that I had lost him. Not just the relationship, but the trust, the respect, everything. Ava, honey, Claire sat down beside me, pulling me into her arms. Breathe, just breathe. He hates me. The words came out in ragged sobs. Claire, he hates me, and I deserve it. I deserve all of it. You made a mistake, a huge one, but you're human. I betrayed him. I used his vulnerability, his trust. And you fell in love. She held my face, forcing me to look at her. Ava, you're not perfect. You made bad choices, but your feelings were real, and maybe in time, he'll see that. But I knew better. I had seen his eyes. I had seen how something in him had shut down for good. Matteo Vieri did not forgive betrayal. He told me that at our first dinner, and I had betrayed him in the worst way possible. In the days that followed, the world kept turning while mine stood still. Marcus put me on leave. Until you get your head straight, he'd said gently. Claire canceled appointments to stay with me. My phone remained silent. No text from Matteo, nothing. But through my sources, I began to hear whispers. The Vieri family was in turmoil. Dante was making aggressive moves, making unilateral decisions, openly questioning Matteo's leadership. There were reports of violent encounters with rivals, of brutal shakedowns, of the kind of tactics Dominic Vieri would never have approved. And Matteo was pulling away, they said, distracted, weakened. Then on a Thursday afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Ava? The voice was young, frightened, familiar. Isabella? You have to come now. It's Matteo. Please, he's... She broke into a sob. I'm at Northwestern Memorial. Please, just come. The line went dead. I grabbed my keys with shaking hands, not thinking, not hesitating. Matteo needed me, and it didn't matter that he hated me. It didn't matter what the consequences were. I was going. Northwestern Memorial Hospital had never looked so menacing. I ran through the sterile hallways, my heart pounding, looking for Isabella. Nurses gave me curious glances as I rushed past, but no one stopped me. Finally, on the 4th floor, cardiac wing, I saw 2 huge men standing in front of a door. I recognized one of them from Matteo's detail. I need to go in, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Miss Sinclair? The man asked, and when I nodded, he opened the door without another word. The room was private, expensive, with medical equipment beeping quietly. And in the bed, looking small and fragile against the white sheets, was Isabella. Her skin was pale, tubes, connected to her arm, monitors tracking her every heartbeat. Matteo was sitting beside her, hunched forward with his elbows on his knees, his face buried in his hands. He was wearing the same clothes as yesterday, or maybe the day before, wrinkled and disheveled. His hair was a mess, as if he'd run his hands through it 1,000 times. He didn't look up when I came in. Matteo, my voice was soft, hesitant. He remained still for a long moment, then he raised his head. His eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted, devastated. When he saw me, something flickered across his face. Surprise, pain, and something that might have been relief before he shuddered it away again. What are you doing here? His voice was hoarse, devoid of strength. Isabella called. She said I glanced at the girl in the bed. What happened? Heart failure, the words were heavy. Second time in 3 days. The doctors say the stress is aggravating her condition. She needs surgery, a risky procedure, but without it. He couldn't finish. I sat in the chair on the other side of the bed, keeping my distance from him but close enough to Isabella. Is she having the surgery? Tomorrow morning, if she makes it through the night. He looked at his sister with so much love and desperation that my heart broke all over again. She's all I have left of my real family, Ava. My mother died when she was born. My father is gone. Dante? He gave a bitter laugh. Dante isn't family. He's competition disguised as blood. Matteo, you wanted the truth about my world? He interrupted, his voice gaining an edge. Here it is. My sister is dying because the stress of an internal war is killing her. Dante is using the moment I'm weakest to consolidate his power. He's made moves this week that have put innocent families at risk, that have tainted everything my father built. And I can't stop him because I'm here, watching the only person who truly matters slip through my fingers. Tears streamed down my face. I'm so sorry. For everything, for lying, for betraying you, for... Stop. He held up a hand, weary. I don't have the energy for anger right now. I don't have the energy for anything but praying my sister survives. We sat in silence for long minutes, only the beeping of the monitors filling the space between us. Then Isabella stirred, her eyes fluttering open. Teo? Her voice was faint, raspy. Matteo was at her side instantly, taking her hand with extreme care. I'm here, Piccolina. I'm here. Her eyes found mine over his shoulder. Ava, you came. Of course I came. I forced a smile through my tears. Told you, she was special, Isabella whispered to her brother, her words labored. Told you she made you happy. Bella, save your strength. No. She squeezed his hand with surprising force. I need to say this. Life is short, Teo. Too short for pride, for anger. She looked between the two of us. She made a mistake. But love is rare. Don't throw it away for a bruised ego. It's not just pride. Matteo's voice was choked. She lied about everything. And you have never lied? Isabella challenged, even in her weakness. Never hidden who you really are. To protect someone. She coughed, and Matteo immediately reached for some water. After she took a sip, she continued. I see. The way you look at her, the way she looks at you, that's real. Mistakes can be forgiven. Love shouldn't be wasted. Bella, promise me. Her voice was getting weaker. Promise me that, if I don't wake up tomorrow, you won't throw away a chance at happiness because of pride. You are going to wake up. Matteo held her face gently. You're going to have the surgery, and you're going to wake up, and you're going to torment me for another 50 years. She smiled faintly. Promise me anyway. He glanced at me over his shoulder, and for the first time since I'd walked in, I saw something other than pain and exhaustion. I saw conflict, uncertainty, and maybe, just maybe, a flicker of hope. I promise, he whispered finally. Isabella sighed, relaxing against the pillows. Ava, thank you for coming. Take care of him. He's stubborn, but his heart is good. I know, my voice broke. She closed her eyes again, her breathing evening out as she drifted back to sleep. We spent the night in that room. Matteo never left Isabella's side. I sat in the chair in the corner, not wanting to intrude, but unable to leave. Sometimes he would look at me, quick, furtive glances freighted with emotions he was clearly trying to process. Around 3 a.m, a nurse came in to check Isabella's vitals. When she left, Matteo finally spoke. Why did you come? He wasn't looking at me, his eyes fixed on his sister. Because no matter how you feel about me right now, I care about you. And about her. And when someone you love needs you, you show up. It's that simple. Nothing about us was simple. No, I agreed. But the feelings were, for me at least. Every moment I spent with you, every conversation, every laugh, it was real. The lie about who I was, that was a terrible mistake. But who I became with you, the feelings I developed, the way I fell in love, that was the truest thing I've ever felt. He finally looked at me, and I saw tears glistening in the corners of his eyes. How do I ever trust you again? How do I believe anything you say? I don't know, I admitted. Maybe you can't. Maybe I broke that permanently. But Matteo, you need to know. I will never publish anything about you. I destroyed all my notes. I resigned from the Tribune yesterday. My career as an investigative journalist is over. Because I can't live with myself, knowing I could hurt you. His eyes widened. You resigned? My journalistic integrity was already compromised the moment I fell in love with you. I can't be objective about something I love, so I chose you even if you never want me back. He was silent for a long time. Then surprisingly, he reached his hand out across the space that separated us. I looked at that hand, strong, scarred with stories I would never fully know, trembling slightly. I took it. And we stayed like that, connected across a sleeping Isabella, until the sun began to rise through the hospital window. They took Isabella to surgery at 7 a.m. Matteo kissed her forehead, whispered something in Italian I didn't understand, and then watched as the gurney was wheeled through the double doors. He just stood there, staring at those closed doors, completely still. Come on, I said gently, touching his arm. Let's go to the chapel or the cafeteria, anywhere but this empty hallway. He let me guide him to the nearby waiting room. It was empty at this hour, just uncomfortable chairs and old magazines. We sat side by side, not touching, but close. Dante sent the pictures, Matteo said suddenly. To your editor, to me, to key members of the family. He hired someone to follow us, to document everything. Then he used it to publicly humiliate me, to prove my judgment was compromised. I closed my eyes, understanding dawning. He orchestrated the whole thing, the exposure, the timing. He's trying to force me out, or force me to make a mistake so big the family votes to remove me. Matteo ran his hands through his hair. And it's working. The moves he's made this week, brutal retaliation, shakedowns that endangered civilians, all under my name, but without my approval. He's deliberately staining my reputation while he consolidates power. What are you going to do? He looked at me, his blue-gray eyes intense. I don't know, but I know I can't let him destroy what my father built. I can't let him turn our organization into something that operates without a code, without honor. Because if we do that, we're no different than any other violent gang. You need proof, my journalist brain kicked back into gear. Documentation of the moves he made without your authorization. Witnesses willing to confirm. Ava, I can help, I interrupted. I know how to investigate, how to document, how to build a case. And I need to do this. I need to fix at least one thing I broke. He studied me for a long moment. Why? Why would you risk anything more for me? Because Isabella is right, love is rare, and it's worth fighting for, even when it feels impossible. I cupped his face gently. Let me fight for you. Let me prove that despite everything, you can trust me when it really matters. For a moment, I thought he would pull away, but then he covered my hand with his, pressing it against his cheek, and closed his eyes. If we do this, he said softly, it has to be the right way. Real evidence, nothing fabricated, because I can't become what Dante is in order to stop him. I agree. He opened his eyes, and for the first time in days, I saw something besides pain. I saw resolve. Then let's do this together. Isabella made it through the surgery. It was 6 agonizing hours in the waiting room, where Matteo and I quietly mapped out our plan to expose Dante, punctuated only by the silent fears that hung in the air between us. When the surgeon finally appeared, still in his scrubs, and said the procedure had been a success, I watched Matteo crumble, not physically, but emotionally. He buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking with the silent, racking sobs of pure relief. I touched his back gently, and he turned, pulling me into a desperate hug. We stood like that for a long moment, him holding on to me as if I were the only solid thing in a world that was falling apart. She's going to be okay, I whispered against his chest. Isabella's strong, she'll recover. Thank God, he murmured into my hair. I don't know what I would have done if... He didn't need to finish the sentence. We visited Isabella in the recovery room. She was groggy but conscious, managing to squeeze Matteo's hand and give me a weak smile. Told you, I'd survive, to haunt you. Matteo laughed through his tears. Yes, you did, and I thank God for it. But when we left the room, leaving Isabella to rest under the watchful eye of the nurses and 2 of his most loyal men, reality set back in. We had work to do. We started that same night. Matteo took me to a safe apartment in the West Loop, a discreet place he kept for confidential meetings. It was Spartan but functional, with a secure internet connection and space to work. Dante is moving fast, Matteo said, spreading documents across the table. These are orders he gave in the last 5 days, all without my approval. A shakedown of a local business owner who refused to pay protection. Disproportionate retaliation against a rival family over a minor turf dispute. And this? He pushed a file toward me. He's been talking to the feds. I opened the file, my eyes scanning the documents. He's offering information on family operations in exchange for immunity. If things don't go his way, he has a parachute. He'll betray all of us to save his own skin. Matteo's voice was laced with bitterness. My father must be turning in his grave. I spent the next several hours using everything I'd learned as an investigative journalist. I cross-referenced dates, checked for inconsistencies, identified witnesses who could confirm Dante acted without Matteo's authorization. I organized everything chronologically, building a systematic, irrefutable case. Matteo watched, occasionally providing context that only an insider would know. We worked side by side until the sun came up, fueled by strong coffee and sheer determination. You're good at this, he remarked at one point in the early morning, watching me highlight connections between seemingly unrelated documents. It was my pill, I replied, then paused. Before I gave it up for you, was quiet for a moment. Ava, did you really resign? It's official tomorrow, or today, I guess. I glanced at the clock, 5 a.m. Marcus is expecting my letter. Why did you do it? I stopped typing, turning to face him. Because I can't be a journalist and be your whatever we might be. There's an inherent conflict there. And between my career and you, I chose you, even if you can never fully forgive me. Matteo stood and walked over to me, turning my chair so we were face to face. I want to forgive you. God knows I want to, but trust. He touched my cheek gently. Trust takes time to rebuild. I know, I said, covering his hand with mine. And I'll take as long as it takes. I will prove to you every single day that my feelings are real, that you can count on me. He leaned in, resting his forehead against mine. Then let's rebuild, together, one day at a time. It was the most fragile and precious promise I had ever received. Matteo called an emergency family meeting for Sunday night, the same warehouse where he had confronted me weeks before, the same circle of powerful men in dark suits, their expressions grim, but this time I was there, not as an exposed traitor, but as Matteo's ally. Dante arrived confidently, practically radiating smugness. He thought he had won, that Matteo was too weak, too distracted to fight back. He wasn't expecting an ambush. Thank you for coming, Matteo began, his voice steady and controlled, standing at the head of the table. I know the last few weeks have been turbulent. My leadership has been questioned, my judgment cast into doubt. Some of you, he looked directly at Dante, have argued that I lack the strength to lead this family. Murmurs of agreement came from some of Dante's loyalists. So tonight, we settle this. Matteo nodded, and two men brought in a large box, placing it on the table. Over the last 5 days, major decisions were made in the Vieri family's name, decisions that put our operations at risk, that stained our reputation, that violated the code my father put in place. Dante leaned back, his smile unwavering. Necessary decisions you were too busy to make. Decisions you made without my authorization, without consulting the council. Decisions motivated not by the good of the family, but by your own ambition. Matteo began pulling documents from the box, distributing them. Here is the order for the shakedown of Marco Bellini, a shop owner who has served our community for 20 years. His only offense? Refusing to pay the exorbitant protection fees Dante established without my approval. One of the older capos, Sal Torino, frowned as he read. This violated our agreement with the Merchants Association. And here, Matteo continued, passing out more papers, is the retaliation Dante ordered against the Costa family. A disproportionate response to a minor turf dispute that resulted in, he paused, his voice hardening, 3 civilians being injured, one of them a 7-year-old child. The silence in the room became thick. Harming children was a line no one crossed. It was against every code Dominic Vieri had ever established. Dante shot to his feet. Those situations required strength. They required judgment, Matteo cut him off. Something you clearly lack. But the worst, he threw another file on the table directly in front of Dante. Is this your meetings with Federal Agent Marcus Hammond, your conversations about being offered immunity in exchange for information on our family's operations? A wave of shock rippled through the room. Dante went pale. That's a lie, a fabrication. They're recordings, Matteo interrupted coolly, of conversations you had, in your own voice, offering to betray every single person in this room to save your own skin if your coup failed. He nodded again, and a voice filled the speakers, unmistakably Dante's, discussing operational details, key names, locations, offering it all up for federal protection. The silence that followed was absolute. Dante looked around, watching every face turn against him. You don't understand. I was trying to protect yourself. Sal Torino stood, his voice dripping with contempt. Dominic Vieri taught us loyalty above all else. You spat on it. One by one, the men around the table stood and turned their backs on Dante, the ultimate gesture of rejection in their culture. Dante looked at Matteo, and for the first time I saw real fear in his eyes. You can't do this. We're blood, Family. You stopped being family the moment you put your ambition ahead of all of us. Matteo's voice was ice. You are disavowed. You have 24 hours to leave Chicago. If you ever come back, if you ever try to contact any member of this organization, the consequences will be permanent. It was exile, a sentence that, in their world, was almost worse than the alternative. Guards appeared, escorting Dante out. He struggled briefly, then went limp, but not before shooting one last venomous glare at Matteo. This isn't over. Yes, Matteo replied calmly. It is. And the door closed. The meeting continued for another 2 hours. Matteo laid out his plan for the family, a gradual transition away from illegal operations and into legitimate businesses, maintaining the community protection structure that was the heart of Dominic's legacy, but cutting out the activities that put innocent people at risk. There was resistance, of course. Change is never easy. But Matteo had proven his strength, his judgment, his loyalty to the code. And one by one, the men agreed to give him the time to implement his vision. When it was finally over, when the room had emptied, Matteo and I were left alone. You did it, I said softly. We did it, he corrected, pulling me close. Without your help, without your ability to organize the evidence, to build the case, I couldn't have. Partners, then, I tried a pat. Small smile. Partners, he agreed. Then more hesitantly. And maybe, eventually, something more. My heart ached with hope. I'm willing to wait, as long as it takes. He kissed my forehead, then my eyes, then finally, gently, my lips. It was a kiss that tasted of old tears, but also of future possibilities. It's not going to be easy, he murmured against my mouth. My world is still dangerous, and there will be people who never accept you, who will always remember you lied. I know, and it's going to take time, a long time, for me to fully trust again. I know that too. But I want to try. His hands framed my face. Because Isabella was right. You make me want to be better. You make me believe I can turn my father's legacy into something we're not ashamed of. Then let's try, I whispered. One day at a time. 6 months later, Isabella was strong and healthy, back to her fashion design studies and tormenting Matteo about working too hard. The Vieri family's transition into more legitimate operations was underway, slow, messy, but it was progress. Claire had finally warmed up to Matteo after watching him spend 3 hours helping her with a pro bono case involving an immigrant family. I still think you two are complicated, she'd said. But I see how he treats you, how he's trying to change. He has my reluctant but real support. As for me, I started working as a communications consultant for nonprofits, using my research and writing skills for causes that made a real difference. It wasn't investigative journalism, but it was rewarding in ways I hadn't expected. And I published one story, a single feature article, 6 months after everything. It wasn't about Matteo specifically. It was about the system that creates families like the Vieris, about communities left behind by official institutions, forced to find protection in non-traditional places, about the thin line between organized crime and community networks, about how real change requires understanding nuance, not just condemnation. The article started conversations. Some called me naive, others called me brave. Matteo simply said, "You told the truth, the complicated truth. That's all that matters." The trust between us was still rebuilding, brick by brick. Some days were easier than others. He still had moments of doubt, moments where I'd see the hesitation in his eyes, and I had moments of overwhelming guilt for what I'd done. But we also had moments of laughter over dinner, of holding hands while watching Isabella parade her designs through the living room, of deep talks on his balcony late at night, of kisses that promised we were choosing to stay, choosing to fight, choosing to love in spite of it all. On a Friday night, exactly 7 months after that mistaken photo, Matteo took me back to Navy Pier. We walked along the water, the September wind carrying the scent of the lake, the city lights reflecting on the dark surface. "Remember when we talked here?" he asked. "About the lines we don't cross, about finding the balance between power and principle?" "I remember." He stopped, turning to face me. "I told you I didn't know if I could offer you a normal life, that my world would always be complicated." My heart began to beat faster. And you said you understand that truth has nuances, that not everything is black and white. He took my hands. Over the last few months, you have proven, time and again, that your feelings are real. That I can trust you when it matters, that you see me, all the pieces of me, even the ones I try to hide, and you choose to stay anyway. Tears began to blur my vision. I don't have a ring yet. Claire warned me you like silver, not gold, and that you hate big flashy stones, so I'm having something custom made. He smiled. But I don't want to wait any longer to ask. He knelt down right there, on the same pier where we had shared difficult truths months before, and held my trembling hands. Ava Sinclair, will you rebuild a life with me, knowing it will be complicated, that we will have to navigate difficult worlds, but that we will be navigating them together? Yes. The word came out on a sob. Yes, 1,000 times, yes. He stood, pulling me into a kiss that was woven with promises and forgiveness and hope. Around us, a few people clapped, but we barely noticed. Because finally, after lies and betrayal, after broken and rebuilt hearts, we had found our way back to each other. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. We would still have challenges, people who questioned us, moments of doubt, but we had something more valuable than perfection. We had conscious choice, real commitment, and a love that had been tested by the worst circumstances and had survived. Epilogue. 2 years later, Isabella's boutique opened on a sunny May afternoon on the Gold Coast. Her name in elegant script across the window, Bella Designs. Matteo was ridiculously proud, though he tried to hide it as he discreetly checked that the security detail was properly positioned. I stood beside him, wearing one of the first dresses Isabella ever created, emerald green, the color of our first real date, with an elegant cut and delicate details that showcased her burgeoning talent. Are you checking perimeters at your sister's boutique launch? I nudged Matteo gently. Old habits, he admitted, then relaxed, lacing his fingers through mine. The simple silver wedding band I'd worn for a year and a half glinted in the sun. Claire showed up with her new husband. Yes, Claire finally married the partner at her firm who'd been flirting with her for years. All right, I'll admit it, this is lovely, she said, gesturing to the boutique. And you two look stable. Is stable a compliment? Matteo asked, amused. Coming from me, it's the highest praise you can get. Life had found a new rhythm. Matteo still led the family, but their operations were increasingly legitimate. Real estate investments, community-owned businesses, protection programs that operated within legal frameworks. It wasn't a complete transformation, but it was progress. And I had found my voice in a new way, writing about systems, about communities, about the complexities that exist between legal and illegal, between right and wrong. My work started conversations, not simplistic condemnations. I looked at Matteo, this complicated man I loved with all of my own complexities, and then at a beaming Isabella greeting customers at the door of her realized dream. It wasn't the life I had planned when I'd sent that mistaken photo on a Friday night so long ago. It was infinitely better. Because in the end, true love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing every day to see someone completely, with all their flaws and all their glory, and deciding they are worth fighting for. And Matteo and I, we chose to fight, every single day, together.